Hello, this is Dr. Kathy Yonkaitis. I'm going to speak to you about how you might revitalize your state and share an example of how Illinois reimagined and restructured. This information is based on a presentation I gave with Dr. Karen Madura and school nurse Linda Vollinger, both board members of the Illinois Association of School Nurses at the time that we developed this presentation. So I've updated it, but I also want to give them credit because certainly we all worked on this together. When we did this work, we didn't know where we were going or which way to do it. And I'm going to share with you what Illinois did. This is actually a picture from the journal article that we also published on this topic. And really what I'm hoping that this will do is open a dialogue for you and to get you thinking about how you might use some of what we did to impact your own organization. So the learning objectives then are to identify the steps necessary to evaluate and restructure an affiliate or association, if you choose to use our method. Talk about how, IASN, the Illinois Association of School Nurses, really developed a more responsive affiliate association that was much more nimble, and then to discuss the advantages and challenges of doing an overhaul like what we did. So there was an imperative for change. Honestly, individuals used to automatically join professional associations, pay their dues, attend the meetings, and volunteer to be on boards and committees and do all sorts of things. But really that's changed over the years, as our most organizations are finding. And so we took a look at our own membership and realized that for the most part, we were aging, that we knew volunteerism was way down across the state, and that people were really not coming to live events like they used to. They were not filling leadership positions, and that the world was communicating virtually. And I should point out that we started this conversation, this work, in 2016, right? So this is before the big shutdown from COVID. What we had in place were a state division, a state organization, and then 10 divisions levels with boards that all reported up to the state. So this meant we had divisions that were missing leaders, leadership positions were empty. When we met as a statewide board, we'd have between 24 and 40 people attending, much closer to the 40 than the 24, quite honestly. And that what ended up happening is we formed an executive board to make decisions, a smaller one, because the big board just was too big. So we had this big elephant in the room. We were going to have to make some significant changes, and some people felt very comfortable. Most of us felt very comfortable in just continuing on in the way we were going. But of course, it wasn't healthy. So we set some goals. We really wanted to become more nimble and efficient. We wanted to decrease the time board spent on administrative tasks because we found this was a real barrier. We wanted to figure out how we were going to do a better job identifying and mentoring the younger members. We wanted to decrease the costs of having a 40-member board, because most of our expenses were going to the board meetings and not to our membership. And we wanted to improve our reach and connection to members across the state. So what did we do? Well, we kind of, looking back, decided it really happened in 4 phases. We did a needs assessment, we formed a committee, we transitioned both our leadership and our bylaws, and then we took a look back at where we are. So this is a timeline of how we did what we did, and I'm not going to go through it, but if you'd like, please pause here and take a closer look. So the needs assessment was the first thing we did, and this started before we kind of almost even knew it, but our president had us read The Change Cycle, this book, and this really started a conversation amongst us about systems changing, systems level changes. And we started thinking, all right, well, you know what? I think we need to figure out what the membership thinks about how things are going, because we're feeling really uncomfortable with the way the organization is set. And we decided to look, some of our members of the board decided to take a look at and survey other organizations. And then we interviewed the division presidents. Remember I said we have 10 divisions we had at the time? So we interviewed the presidents and past presidents of divisions to get their opinions on what they thought was going on and what was needed. So we presented those findings to the board, and that included the member survey and those informal and formal kind of focus groups with our division leaders and state board members. We found through the survey of membership that basically 87% were not interested in serving at the state level in a leadership position, and 85% weren't interested in serving at the division level. And most identified that time and distance were barriers to their participation. But this just emphasized that we knew we kind of had a big problem if we were going to be looking forward at all. So an ad hoc committee was formed and included all of those division presidents and a few other leaders like myself. And we were all read The Race for Relevance, the 5 Radical Changes for Associations. This book was really helpful and it guided our work. We met bi-weekly and eventually developed a draft model that we presented to the board. What we found, no surprise to anybody, was that we had too many leadership positions that we were unable to fill, that board meetings were too big and no decision making really happened there. It was more of an information dump, quite honestly, that we were being bogged down by administrative responsibilities, and that we really were focused on the board members and not on the overall members. And so we offered solutions, including to eliminate the divisions, to organize to a 7-person board in which there were 7 voting members. There is 1 member that does not vote because that is the person of our foundation, a foundation arm of our organization. We thought that hiring an administrative support person would be, or support group would be helpful, and that we really needed to refocus onto a shared governance with the member at the center. Believe me, everyone didn't agree at first, or there was quite a bit of conversation and differing opinions as we went forward, but we really felt like it was important. So what we proposed then to the board and got approval for was to change to a 1 statewide division and dissolve the current division structure, and move to state level nominating committees, finance committees, education committees, and go in that way, and then to reorganize the board for efficiency, effectiveness, dropping down to what ultimately became an 8-member board and looking for a governance model. And this is that model. And these are the members of that board. You can see the members at the middle. It's supported by admin support. The board members are those darker blue. And then these are the committees which reported to then those board members. We also decided that we needed to kind of have a campaign to share with our members what we had come to and how we'd come to it. This is a picture of an infographic that was created. We created a YouTube video that people could watch describing it. And then we had some listening tours where we went out to various parts of the state to talk about this in person with people. We sent it out via email and social media. But it takes time. And we had to then, go through all sorts of considerations in terms of governance documents, our bylaws, and our operating guidelines. We, read through, we tried to make the proper changes. We had to go back and tweak things. We really looked at moving from having a member provide administrative support to having an organization outside provide a company provide that support. And the one thing that I'll encourage was that you really need to know what your organization requires for changing your bylaws, what it constitutes a quorum, all of those things. You need to really dig in and understand these. And we did consult some people who were, well versed in, bylaws and changing bylaws to make sure we were doing things properly and doing it as openly as we could. What we did in terms of our leadership is our board members all agreed to stay on for one additional year, or most of them, well, half of them, so that we could stagger the terms. So people were all were going to be going off. Half stayed on, and then half were changed into these new positions so that we could stagger what was going on and have some stability. We also hired an office support company who maintains all the databases, provided our communications, helped with the bookkeeping and our banking, and gave us a permanent address. And they had many subscription services which we then could cancel, like Zoom and SurveyMonkey. They had insurance we didn't have to buy separately. So there were a lot of things that we didn't even know we were going to get as a bonus when we hired the company, but it really helped us with our organization, and handling those administrative things like support when we're doing conferences that was left to members previously. So where are we now, or what were our successes? So hiring that support company was really great. We've also been able to encourage younger members to join leadership roles. Part of that was removing barriers for running for office. So there used to be a lot of barriers about you had to be in the organization a certain amount of time or served on certain committees so that you could move up. And so we removed some of those. We've reduced, obviously, the size of our board meetings, and we've saved between 50 and 75% on that. And then we just have this consistency across the state for our representation. Where are we now? Well, there was reluctance to change, and we lost some members over that. I'm not going to say that we didn't. But we also had to deal with COVID-19, which again presented some challenges, I think, in terms of our ability to network face-to-face like we would like to. But it also gave us opportunities to network virtually, which we expanded greatly during COVID-19 and has resulted in great attendance in educational offerings, and for instance, that are offered virtually. And really, I think one of the biggest challenges that we'll continue to face, but it's not abysmal in any way, but is how are we going to continue to mentor and make those meaningful connections with our members to encourage them to participate at the board level. And really that just has taken some concerted effort amongst ourselves to make those connections virtually, and then to make them in person when we have opportunities, like our annual conference, like the national conference we had in Chicago this year, and other times where we're meeting and having coffee clutches and different things to try and connect. So finally, here are the references I've talked about here. I do want to point out that the article that we published on this is the last notation here, and that we actually did a podcast with Cindy Gilmore, the editor of National School Nurse, that you can also link to and listen to. Thank you.